This live is for anyone who has a husband that's maybe emotionally unavailable. We're going to be talking about how to help men master their emotions and heal their past. So I have this great guest coming on, Kevin. He is a transformational coach and he helps men mindfully master their emotions. I'm so excited to have him on. He helps men work with their emotions. He also helps them heal their mind and heal their past. So he helps them step into this incredible power, this purpose, and their potential. So I'm so excited to have him on. He's just about to join us. Wives who say, my husband doesn't open up about his feelings. My husband doesn't know how to talk about things, or he shuts my own feelings down. So Kevin, welcome.
Hey, well, thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here, and so is my community. It's so wonderful when we get a male perspective on this and healing and working on marriages and just tapping into emotions, because everything I do, really, the jumping off point is emotions. What are you feeling, and what is your body trying to tell you with that emotion of sadness, frustration, anger, shame, guilt? So I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you again. Thanks for reaching out. And yeah, I've been looking forward for this conversation for a while. We've been talking about it, and here we are.
So, how do we start this conversation? Like, I have women who are like, I can't get my husband to open up. I want him to tell me, like, they feel that there's something going on in their mind, that they feel a certain way. They can see it on their face, they can feel it in their energy, they can sense it with their body language. But their husbands will say, everything's fine.
Yeah, I think that to that point, that's all you can do, unfortunately, is just, coming from a loving and respectful and calm place and let them know, what you're seeing, what you're feeling, and what's happening from your perspective and wanting, and saying why this is important and all that stuff. But then after that, there's really not much you can do. We can't force anyone to make any change they don't want to. And if you force them to do it, it's not going to end well one way or another. So I think that's one thing that I'll get women reaching out to me and say, no, it's a very similar question. And I say what you can do is let them know from a place of love, not like when you're angry and frustrated and you're having an argument, but when you're both calm and just saying what you see and the benefits of if he would to open up or do therapy or coaching or whatever, right? Whatever the avenue. And then really is step back and then focus on self, right?
Yeah,
How are
it's
you showing up for yourself? How are you taking care of yourself? Because why do you need them to change, right? Or to
yeah.
shift?
That's a really interesting point. Why do you need them to shift? Obviously, it's really nice if you can both talk about your feelings, but sometimes we want our partner to talk about their feelings so it can validate our own. Like, I'm feeling really sad about this event that just happened, or I'm sad that my children are leaving the home and they graduate and they're off to university. How do you feel? They're like, I'm okay. But we almost want them sometimes to validate our feelings as women. So I think that's a
Yeah.
really good question. Why do you want them to open up? What if the reason is I want them to open up because I just want to know how they feel about things? Is there a way to start to like introduce that conversation with your partner to, like you said, lovingly, kindly, to say, like, I wanting your husband to be more of an empath, or just to help you through that process?
Yeah. Again, I don't think you can force anyone to be other than
No.
what they are now, right? Um, yeah, I don't really know the full answer to that, but again, forcing someone to do something that they don't want to do is never going to work out well, right?
Yeah.
You can say why it's so important to you, right? Why you wish that to be, but then it's coming to almost like peace or come to terms that this is the way it is. Can I accept my partner the way they are? Because it could be that they never decide to shift out of that closed off, or maybe they don't feel they're closed off. That's just you know what I mean? Like they're okay with being that. So
Yeah.
like, can you be okay with that? And if you can't, then I think that's more of a sense of like, are you in the right relationship, right? But I totally get it in the sense of like, um, seeing like perhaps you're in a perspective, you've done enough work on yourself or whatever, and you can see, oh man, if he could only do that thing, we can work on that one thing, things would be so much better. And I get that because I've been even on the flip side. I've been on the side where that's happened, and I've been on the flip side where it's like now I see it's like, oh, if she can only focus on this one thing, things would be so much better. But again, everyone's at their own pace, their own journey. And I think what really shifts, and maybe this is going away from your question, but what really shifts is when there is a consequence to not doing the work, right? It's usually when we're at our lowest, when the shit hits the fan kind of thing, is when like, oh crap, like now I got to focus on this now, right? I'm not saying to create that, right? Like I'm not saying like an ultimatum or anything, but I mean sometimes just life happens, and then all of a sudden they're willing and wanting, right? Like that's sort of what happened with me. I had no interest. I didn't know anything about any of this stuff that I talk about, support men with. And then just life happened outside of the home. Like it was family. Like my dad got really sick, and that opened up that brought up a lot of things for me. And then that sort of facilitated my transformation, right? So it's just sometimes life just happens. And then when that thing happens, sometimes it wakes that person up, whether it's a man or a woman, right?
Yeah, so I'm hearing a lot. It's really just acceptance. It's acceptance of where your partner's at, where they're at on this whole journey. And sometimes I use this with a lot of the women I work with too. It's just seeing who they are, like seeing, like you can almost see through people sometimes and see that that's their inner child, or that's how they were raised. They weren't raised to talk about their feelings, or if they were shut down or squashed. So just meeting them where they're at and realize, if they're not meeting my needs really emotionally, who else can? Can I meet my own needs emotionally? Like how can I support myself better in feeling loved, or maybe I have girlfriends I can go talk to, or somebody else. So I think it's really important, if your partner's not there, there's some acceptance, and where else can I go, but communicating with your partner too. What are your needs? I would really like if you would be able to have a conversation like this with me, or how do you start this process of teaching men to really master their emotions?
Yeah, but the point that I'll get to that
Yeah.
question, but the point that you said about meeting your own needs, there's two parts to that. Is like, yeah, like I can't rely, whether it's the man or the like either partner. You can't rely on your partner to be everything for you. That's what I've learned just through being married for almost 20 years. It's like that's what I've learned. They can't be everything for you. So certain needs, you got to take responsibility for it. They're not your sole person to go to. There are perhaps some non-negotiables that are like, no, it has to come from this person, right? Like sexual needs, right? Like you're not going to go outside of the relationship. It's like that's the person to meet those needs. So yes, I need that person to do that, and that's where sort of like the I think it's like the uh, where you're like, is this the right partner for me? If you can't meet that need for me, which is you're the only one that can meet it, then I'm at an impasse. Like, do I give up that need and say that, hey, it's never going to be fulfilled? Or do I say, I'm sorry, we're not the right match, right? Um, so that was the first part. The second part I already forgotten,
Oh
but
yeah. Where I'd love to hear your strategies. Where do you start in this process of helping men master their emotions? One of my clients, I love to say, she's like, "There's nothing sexier than a man who can talk about his feelings." So let's
yeah,
talk about some of your strategies. What do you do? What's your jumping off point for helping men
I
master their emotions?
think strategy. I think the men that come to work with me, they're already open to to working on their inner world because something's not like, whether the marriage is falling apart, whether they're just tired of not knowing who they are. There's so many different reasons why they come to work with me, but there's something externally in their life that's happening that's not working out, and so they're willing to do the work so that that thing shifts. And so that openness and that willingness opens you up. And then when you come to me, I'm like, well, okay, well, this is sort of the processors. This is sort of the things we're going to be focusing in on. And for me, it's tapping into that suppressed emotion, tapping into your emotion, like your emotional side. Like, what have you been suppressing? What haven't you been able to express? What have you too easily expressed, right? Like, how are you imbalanced in that sense? But it all comes, for me, comes down to the roots of it. Like, what what happened in your early part of your life, childhood, adolescence, that made you believe this way, made you act this way, behave in these ways. What hurt have happened to you that you've been, again, holding on to? And so then as we start to uncover that's all linked up to what they're dealing with right now, the emotional aspect comes into play. And it
Mm-hmm.
has to come into play. And then so for me, again, because they're open to working on the thing of today, then they're open to the emotional aspect. Are they open to it to like, yeah, let's just do this? No, a lot of guys have that hesitation. But again, it comes back to, why are we doing this? And so because of the why is so strong, they're open to it. But in regards to the process, again, it's just, I think the first thing is like giving a voice to, one, the emotions that have been suppressed, to like, what are the things that you've been the sadness or the anger. First the anger, then what's underneath that anger. Is it grief? Is it sadness? Is it disappointment? And letting that come, like letting that be expressed through words and then through feeling in itself. And then it's actually tapping into your inner child, to that, you know, that part of ourselves, and giving that part of ourselves a voice. And when that happens, it's almost automatic that the emotions come up. Almost automatic for me. Like I've seen with clients, when they allow that part of themselves to start speaking, like literally speaking, the emotion comes up so easily, in the sense of like, it's not held back, right? Because it's just so strong, because they finally gave a voice to that part of themselves that they haven't even, maybe even knew about or recognized, right?
Yeah, it's really incredible how we feel the pain. Really, like you said, it's the pain that gets you on this journey to really want to master your emotions. You're sick and tired of feeling a certain way, whether you can name it or not. You're sick and tired of just feeling confused. So I love what you said. There's acceptance for your partner. We can't change them. But what will open them up is when they hit their own, whether hopefully it's not rock bottom. It's so often a rock bottom of some sorts. But I always say, if you can get on this journey and get on this train before you're in a place of health crisis or mental health crisis, it's even better. But once you're in that place where you're like, you know what, I'm tired of feeling this way, that's when this surface stuff, the stuff you're feeling right now, the not feeling heard in your relationship, feeling not respected, when you're feeling that, often it's bubbling down below from, like you said, inner child, or that smaller version of you who's, and I don't like to use the word immature, but it's really, sometimes they were developed fully because they weren't taught how to love themselves, or they were abandoned possibly by some sort of, like maybe one of their parents, they got divorced, or even abandoned in their own feelings, being told that stop crying, or suck it up. I had it so much worse than you. And that was abandoning their feelings, not even abandoning them physically. So it's incredible how these little things happen, but over time they layer up, layer up. And by the time we're in adults, we are so out of alignment from where we want to be that we feel lost. We don't even know who we are. And often, like, I have so many women that come to me in their like late 30s, 40s, and into their 50s, and it's just this path, and they're like, I'm exhausted. I'm like, because we're trying to be someone we're actually not, and she's in there, or he's in there, and like they're just buried under some stuff. But you can become that person you want to be when you start to master your emotions and get so curious. And whether you can name those emotions or not, you might not be able to tell if you're sad, angry. You just feel horrible. You just feel this heaviness. You feel this, I just lost power, but I'm still here. We had a big thunderstorm, no power, but I'm here. Yeah, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, it's a compounding effect, right? Of years and years of not being able to deal with certain things that have happened, that created, obviously, feelings, emotions are there, right? And like you had said earlier, is, yeah, how were we raised? What do we were led to believe, especially for men, right? Like men, um, talking generalized statements of like, we're not, boys don't cry, men have to be, you have to toughen up, don't show your emotions. All those things, those messages that we received, we sort of like took in as like, as truth. Like, for me to be a man, I have to follow this thing. And one of the things that I have to follow is like shove aside emotion. And so then, yeah, if that's the case for you, then you get in a marriage and your partner wants you to to talk about your feelings. Like, what do you mean feelings? It's true. Like, I've been so disconnected. I don't even understand what a feeling, like, I don't understand, like you said, is it sadness? Is it grief? Is it this? I don't know. It's just, but the easiest way to say it, like, do you feel heavy, like internally, like stuck or like contracted? When you do, that is sort of that quote unquote negative emotion. You don't have to name it, but that's what it is. When you feel light and free, that's a positive emotion. So that's really somewhere to start. But coming back to, like, first the messages, the things that you came to believe around masculinity, about being a man, about emotions, plays a part as an adult. Obviously, that's the way your operating system. But then there's that other part that you talked about was, for a lot of men, some men that I've coached, because they're sort of classified as that nice guy, is that the childhood was fine, or they see everything was good, and for the most part it was, but they will put aside the hurt that they did feel, whatever it was, because everybody else had it so much worse than I did. Like, why should I complain? Why should I do that stuff? It's like, no, you're not complaining. You're not blaming. You're honoring yourself. You're honoring your experience. So that's another thing that I see is like, no, I'm just going to shove aside the emotions that I felt about my childhood, because my parents provided. They gave me all these things, and yeah, but you still feel that way. It'll still come up in our coaching sessions. They'll be like, yeah, but you still feel that way. You just said you felt that. Why is it invalid? Oh, because, again, because, other people had it worse, or I had so much good in my, yeah, but you're invalidating your experience. So it's all these things come into play. Like, there's so many dynamics that come into play with it. But yeah, I'll just stop there.
A good way that I always explain it too is when we go through something in life, a memory. It could have been, this is one I usually use. True, I'm trying to think of a different one, but I'll just go with this one. So you witnessed bullying, even like you weren't bullied, but you witnessed it in class. Like some kid answered the question 4 plus 4 is 10, and everyone laughed. They laughed, and whether they're laughing at him or just laughing because, like, who would think 4 plus 4 is 10? That is a memory, and that memory gets like bonded into your amygdala, which holds all your experiences. It holds all the emotions associated with these experiences. You can't necessarily remember the words per se, but you'll remember how it felt. You'll remember what it smelled like per se. That's why sometimes smells bring back memories. So we have this memory, and from that memory, the belief is, I don't know if I want to speak up because people will laugh at me if I'm wrong. So we have these memories which form these beliefs, because there's an emotion there, emotion of, ooh, that's kind of embarrassing that that kid said it wrong. So we have this memory, this emotion, this belief, and we carry that through to us. And then, like, a lot of people sometimes won't share their opinions because they have a fear of getting embarrassed. So it's amazing how these little things that we were taught when we were little, which don't make any sense rationally, but totally make sense when we get into that childlike mind. So it's really powerful when you can go back to those times and really empower yourself and kind of start to heal those aspects of yourselves that have these beliefs that really aren't in alignment with who you are, that you really do want to speak your opinion. You're not scared of other people laughing at you, but part of you actually is.
Yeah, it's a protection mechanism, right? You're protecting yourself from feeling that same feeling, even though you can't connect it until you do the conscious work to figure that out. But once you can look at that, when you start like digging in and like, oh, that's the memory that I have of why I can't speak my truth, I can't speak up. When you could start shifting the perspective of what happened and start seeing it from a different view, then it's like, oh, I am free to, like, it is okay. And feel that, again, that feeling, oh, I felt ashamed, like I felt horrible. Okay, can we feel that? Are you okay with feeling that? Yeah, I'm okay with feeling that. Okay, so then if it does come up, you just prove to yourself that you can deal with that. You can deal with that feeling, that emotion. So, like, let's do it, right?
Yeah, it's so true.
Shifting that perspective of what actually happened.
Yeah, it's a good point. What about the other spectrum? What if, like, husbands are almost extremely emotional, but to a point where there's some unhealthy attachment there, or maybe that, yeah, we're going to the other side, because I'm wondering, sometimes there's, like, let's go into attachment styles, like anxious attachment, avoidant attachment.
The other side would be like that codependent, nice guy, which is again something that I focus in on with my coaching, supporting men. Um, and in that case, what I've noticed is even for myself, because that I'm a recovering nice guy, recovering people pleaser, so is um, I abandoned, or that man abandoned his masculine traits, or a lot of his masculine traits. So the connection with the emotion is good, but it's to a place where it's not healthy because he's not confident, because he's not assertive, because you know what I mean. He hasn't embodied those masculine traits because he's let it go. So that being said, what to do when the husband or the man is more emotional? Um, I don't know if that. Do you feel like? I mean, I'm going to put that back on you as a conversation. Do you feel like that is a bad thing or a negative thing, or how does that become a negative thing?
I think
I
it
haven't.
becomes a negative when it crosses boundaries, when it's becomes too much sometimes. Like sometimes I think men would say to the women, like, why are we still talking about this? Like we've already talked about this, or when will you get over that? Sometimes I don't see it as often, but sometimes I do hear about it with husbands that they just will say like they need more validation, they need more support, but really they're not supporting themselves, they're not validating themselves, but they're looking to sometimes their wives, kind of like wives sometimes look to their husbands. So we
Yeah,
traditionally would say it's more of a female thing, but it happens in both sexes.
for sure. And then there's one point that came up as you're saying that is that man who is the more connected to the feminine, more open with the emotion. Again, he's made his partner his place to dump his emotions, to be validated. So the two parts that you said that came up was like one, the relationship with himself. How is he validating his own emotions and approving of himself and all that stuff without the need of the partner to do it, right? And then two is that guy is probably disconnected from um, male friends, because if he had those male friends, then he could express something and then be met with what he needed, right? Like you had said earlier, like go to your female friends and talk to them. Same thing. But that man that is more emotion, like open with his emotions, 9 times out of 10, I guarantee you, he doesn't have too many male friends. That's just the truth that I've seen myself, that I've seen with some of my clients. Again, being that nice guy, turn more towards the feminine than the masculine, you won't have those friends. But if you create, if not create, but if you facilitate and start having those friendships, you have a place to go to talk about these things, and it'll be met in a different way. It'll be met in a way that you need because you're not getting it from the feminine, right? You need that masculine reinforcement, not the toxic stuff, not the unhealthy old paradigm bullshit. Sorry for swearing, but like still like somebody to confront you and like be there and like, hey, I don't think that calling you on your, I always say it's like calling you on your shit. Somebody who can be there and like, hey man, that's not cool. Like what's happening here? Really confront you in that way. I think is really important. So for any man that resonates, like, look, do you have any male friends you can go to and really have these kind of conversations and see what comes from that?
Yeah, and just to clarify, anyone who's wondering what we mean by feminine and masculine, we are all made up of a balance of feminine and masculine. And the feminine would be like more your creative energy, your nurturing energy. Well, masculine energy is more that planning, organizing, decisiveness, like more kind of black and white. So that's would you agree that's where we're talking about the feminine and the masculine?
Yeah, 100%.
Perfect. I have another question that came up recently. What if your partner uses humor to cover up their emotions? Maybe they're sarcastic or but you can see through it. You know that they're maybe hiding something. Is there any way to approach a partner who's maybe avoiding their feelings with humor?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing as
Yeah.
one of the first things he said was having that respectful, calm, loving conversation and just putting that back, like sharing that awareness. It's like, hey, I'm noticing this, and just go like noticing you use humor when this and this happens. I think, is there some emotion that you're trying to run from? You don't want to, and just be that space, right? Can you be that space to just bring that up and then see where they come from, like where they receive you with, or how they receive it, right? So I think that's really what you can do is just share in a loving way of what you see, and then again, sit back. And some people don't, some guys won't want to hear that, or some guys won't want to hear that. Then we'll sit with it and then be like, oh shit, she was right. Like there's something there.
How much do you
But you don't know if
lovingly,
you don't know,
sorry.
right?
Yeah, I was going to say, how much, here, you keep going. I got to clear my throat. Sorry. How much do you think you should lovingly lovingly encourage someone to open up about their emotions? Like you can clearly see, like I like the one man who posted here, they're using pride to cover up their weakness, or sometimes they use status to cover up where they feel inadequate. When you can see right through that, and you see your partner's getting frustrated with it, like telling you it's not true, but you can see it and it is true, probably, most likely. But again,
Yeah.
do you finally just drop it at some point?
I think you would have to, right? Again, can you come to a sort of acceptance and peace of, I've said enough. You know what I mean? I've said enough. And why are you continuing to bring this up? Because if you're not okay with it, are you actually in the right relationship, right?
I love that. We just keep
Because you're trying
circling back.
to,
I love it.
yeah,
It's so
yeah.
true. So yeah, the answers always come back to, can you accept it? Like, I love this, and can you meet your own needs and lovingly encourage? I love that stuff. So I guess the last question I have for you before we wrap this up is, any tips for raising teenage boys so that they can express their emotions and go into healthy relationships?
In general, from the men perspective, or both from as a parent?
Both. Fire away.
I was just gonna say is be the living example of what you want for your son, right? Um, how are you connected to your emotions? How are you about talking about, tough topics and stuff like that? What are you showing your son through your actions, through how you interact with your partner, how you talk to them, right? How you deal with your emotions. Do they see you like flipping out when something doesn't go your way? Do they see you complaining and all that stuff? Because they're watching. They've always been watching, but now they're more aware or they're, yeah, more aware, or they understand better because they are older. But in regards to teenagers, like I have it, my son just turned 13. Um, and so what do I see is, yeah, I want to encourage him. I want to give him, not give him confidence, but provide him the space for the confidence to do certain things. Same thing, I noticed something. Same thing, we're talking about partners, but same thing, I noticed something within him that is not for his best, is being able to have that conversation and let him see what's happening, giving him a space to talk and to share instead of to shame, right? Like maybe past generations, maybe what I experienced, maybe what you experienced is like shaming, like you shouldn't be this way, don't do this, don't feel that emotion, why are you crying? Especially if you're a boy, a man, and a teenager, like same thing. If you're not allowed to express your emotion, if my son is upset, I'm gonna let him be upset, and that's a big thing that's shifted for me in my own transformation, is how I approach my kids. And now, if he's sad, be sad. If you're crying, let him cry. What is this about? Like, what's happening? And before, it would just be like, don't cry, just get over it. Like, that's invalidating your emotion. That's not going to support him for his future. So it's being able to just be there. But a lot of us can't be there, because how can I be with his emotions if I can't be with my emotions, right? So that's what shifts when you can be with your emotions, is that you could be with others because you're not triggered so quickly, right?
Mhm. Such a good point. And one thing I think about too is, if you're new to this journey of like really getting in touch with your feelings, like maybe you didn't raise your kids as emotionally intelligent because you weren't necessarily there yet, but now you are. Kids bounce back so much faster. Their minds are so much more open than adults. So the damage hasn't been done. It can totally be by you at that point starting there and talking to your kids about, you know what, dad and I, we argued this way. It wasn't the healthiest way. Dad and I are working on this, this, and this. Like just being open, not hiding stuff, I think is really important at a kid appropriate level, of course.
For sure.
Yeah, because there's so many wives that I talk to, they have such mom guilt for what they think they've caused to their children. But just talking about it with your kids is
Yeah.
so powerful because then they understand it better instead of like creating their own story and dialogue within. So I want to mention that. And then what if you're, again, kind of new to this journey and your kids have witnessed more yelling or kind of anger? And their go-to is more anger versus crying. They just get angry, like frustrated, almost like tantrums still as teenagers. Where do you go with that? Because yes, we want them to feel their emotions, but what strategies would you use for those teenagers?
Yeah, I still let them express it, right? Don't suppress it.
Don't stop
Can
it.
you be with, don't stop it. And then can you be with, like, don't get so triggered because they're angry. Can you take that step back and let them be in their anger, but then just ask them, like, what just happened there? Like, what is that all about? And then getting them to do the work on themselves, really, because you've done it on yourself. But yeah, they might have learned from you, and can you have that compassion towards them? Because it's like, oh, no wonder you're acting that way. I could totally understand because that's all you saw me do for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, right? Um, so it's having that understanding for yourself. This way you can better relate to your kid, right? And then yeah, just talking it through, making it okay in a sense. Not okay to go to get physical or to hurt someone, but I mean that not making any emotion wrong. And then just being able to support them and like understanding what's going on there. Because if they're understood, if they're, well, as we all want to be, right? Seen, heard, understood, and loved. If we can do that to our kids, then things can shift, I believe, where they're not going to approach that way in the future as time goes, as the more you approach it this way, right? They shift because they're like, oh, I can talk to mom and dad about this, or I can say, hey, you're embarrassing me, instead of holding it in, and then all of a sudden one day, poof, they explode, right? Because you've embarrassed them too much or said something that they didn't like. I don't know. I'm just
Well, it's so good.
thinking of
I
things.
actually ask my 10-year-old that sometimes because I take his youngest brother who's 6 to school. I have 6, 8, and 10 boys. And so I was like, does it embarrass you that I'm on the field, like the school field, like because I'm right by his classroom and his portable. So he's like, no, I don't care. But I think that's great. I just ask him like, because I think I maybe felt some embarrassment that my mom was around sometimes. Like, it was amazing that she was a stay-at-home mom. But I got to a certain age where I'm like, my other friends, their moms work full time. Yet
Yeah,
it's such a gift that my mom actually got to take me to school. But I think I felt a little embarrassed that my mom was so available, was able to support, volunteer at the school, yet I thought that was strange at the time. So I think it's really good to be able to, yeah, talk to your kids about their feelings, which is so, so good. Kevin, this has been amazing. Thank you for all your perspectives on how to really master your emotions, particularly your lens from a men's view. Thank you. How can our viewers, because I'm going to post the replay, how can our viewers get a hold of you?
best way is just reach out right now through Instagram, through the DMs, or leave a comment on this video, tagging me. But yeah, best way is just send me a DM. I'm in the process of getting my website put together. Then you can go onto the website, send me an email, kind of thing. But right now, just send me a DM, and I'm open to having a conversation. If you can ask any questions or anything, I'm here to support. This is what I love doing. So yeah, don't be a stranger. Reach out.
Amazing. And any of your viewers, I have this great little guide, 3 proven ways to save a marriage. Feel free to grab that from my bio. And yeah, this has been wonderful. And I'll definitely tag you on the replay so you can post it to your platform too.
Sounds great. Thanks, Beth.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Have a good day.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Yeah, bye.